Nobody on their deathbed ever said, "I wish I spent more time working." I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On this weekly podcast, a topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 7, Chapter 7.
4-day work week.
Recently, the results of a 4-day work week study were released, and once again, it got many of us worker bees excited about that possibility. We have been thinking about the idea of a 4-day work week pretty much ever since we started a 5-day work week. This most recent 4-day work week trial is ongoing. It involves 33 companies worldwide and over 900 employees. Both the employees and the companies were surveyed, and the results are pretty astounding. 97% said they wanted to stay with the 4-day work week. The benefits to workers seem obvious, but even corporate executives reported that productivity was up, absenteeism down, and there was a huge upswing in morale. Note, too, that this particular study does not involve a 40-hour work week, which many previous experiments did. 4-day work week with 10 hours a day to make up for that free Friday. But this time it's 8 hours a day, 4 days a week, 32-hour work week, 3-day weekend, woohoo! One company founder said the difference in their business was transformative. Is it time, after all the trials, experiments, discussions, surveys, number crunching, to finally adopt a 4-day work week across almost all of the labor force? Certainly, COVID threw the typical work week into a tailspin. Isolation, work from home, the rise of the part-time job. We saw the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, and we heard more talk of work-life balance. Seems like the perfect time to emerge from the turmoil with a new model, a 4-day work week model. The problem with change is, as Ringo said, it don't come easy, especially on such an established practice. We've been on a 5-day work week for almost a century. Henry Ford is credited with being one of the first captains of industry to turn the work week on its ear. He invented the assembly line, so a car that took over 12 hours to assemble now took a little more than an hour. Productivity increased. Sales went through the roof. Ford responded by doubling worker pay. Then in 1926, introduced a 5-day work week. He also settled on what was even then a century-old concept of a 40-hour work week. And it replaced the then common 70 hours, which experts deemed unsustainable. Labor even campaigned for it with the slogan, 8 hours for labor, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. 8 hours a day also conveniently broke the day down into 3 shift teams so that Ford could keep the factory going all day long. Henry Ford did believe that a happier employee would be more productive, but Ford also thought that leisure time was important to the American worker so that they could make time for more consumer products, like, for example, the automobile. There was a little money madness to his method. His profits continued to soar, and Ford worker loyalty was unprecedented. Other industries and companies began to take notice. By the Great Depression of the 1930s, then-President Herbert Hoover asked companies to reduce weekly hours across the board in lieu of layoffs. By 1938, there was FDR, and he wrote into law the Fair Labor Standards Act, which established a 40-hour work week for even more workers. 40 hours, 5 days a week. In 1956, a young and upcoming politician suggested that a 4-day work week was just around the corner. That politician was Richard Nixon. True. Canada didn't get an official 40-hour law until the 1950s. Even now, the EU limits a work week to 48 hours maximum. Of course, it's Europe. Don't they take 4-hour lunches and then break for tea? I don't know. I think they have wine for breakfast. So that's been it for almost 100 years. Most of us have been settled into that rhythm of a 40-hour work week, 5 days a week. And let me add also, we're working 9 to 5. It's a bit odd, isn't it? Because we've gone through decades of different work models, yet we still are mostly in a mode of Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Think about it. Most of the world still revolves around this concept. We still think in terms of a morning and afternoon rush hour, and that mostly happens, except in bigger cities where traffic is constantly congested. Prime time media is still considered to be earlier in the evening when people aren't at work. Schools are open during the day. People in the business of recreation tend to run their events evenings and weekends. We go to the mall and run errands on Saturday, and Sunday is the day of rest. Even though for an ever-increasing number of North Americans, Sunday is not even their Sabbath. And what about banks and financial institutions?
Well, that's it, sir. Your transaction will be valid within 2 business days.
Business days? What's a business day? Have you looked outside? It's the 21st century. People are working all the time. Plus, you're telling me the computer that's going to validate this transaction has the weekend off, including Sunday? Your computer is a Christian? Yeah, you can say it's a 24-hour world, 24/7, but the majority still acts like it's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Where I live, city noise bylaws mandate no construction can begin before 7 a.m. or continue after 7 p.m. The hours are even a little more restrictive for Saturdays and no work on Sundays. If Sunday is not your Sabbath and you work midnights, well, too bad. Get earplugs. Try and sleep through the racket, because we're all pretending it's a 9 to 5 world. Some businesses have reacted to a changing world, though. They've adopted extended hours. The biggest change really in the food industry, grocery stores and fast food. The main ones to be open, 24 hours a day to accommodate people's different working times. Some gas stations, too. It's a small acknowledgement to changing work hours. You need your food and gas, so we'll be open. However, if you need a full oil change or you want to shop for a new credenza, sorry, business hours are posted on the door. Speaking of fast food, one of the biggest changes, most of them now have all-day breakfast. That idea is still fairly new. Through time, how many people do you think lost the argument at McDonald's trying to get an Egg McMuffin at 11:01 a.m.? What do you mean you don't serve breakfast anymore? You mean all the eggs and the muffins just disappeared? It's only 1 minute after 11. Come on. How many years did it take for McDonald's and all the others to figure out that people wanted an Egg McMuffin at 2 in the afternoon because they just woke up? They were going in for the late shift. All-day breakfast. In my life, I have worked Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but I've also done early mornings, the graveyard shift. I worked 7 days a week. I worked Wednesday through Sunday for a while. But when I wasn't working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I always felt out of rhythm with the rest of the world. My point is, as much as we have some businesses operating at all hours, we have different shifts, staggered hours, work from home, and everything else, we run as if we are a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 world. Ergo, how easily might we convert to a 4-day work week? That is the Ergo McMuffin. Goods and services that we've grown to expect would still be there 7 days a week. It's just that now each of those businesses would have to change their employee model to 4 days a week. Suddenly, large segments of the population would have this extra day, like Henry Ford said, to make time for extra consumer products and services. And that would have to change the way the business and the world operates. Thank God it's Thursday. Mondays, I've got Thursday on my mind. Speaking of that, do we pick a new standard for a 4-day work week? Is it Monday through Thursday, or is it Tuesday through Friday? The latter would seem an easier conversion. And then we'd all sing, I don't like Tuesdays. I don't like Tuesdays. But Monday through Thursday has a better feel, doesn't it? Friday already has that almost the weekend aura. Thursday is called Friday Junior. So Wednesday would be Thursday Junior. Well, perhaps I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The world would need to change. There would be a different rhythm. If you think about it, a 40-hour work week appealed to people because they were working 70 hours. 5-day work week because they were working 7. Now the 5 and 40 seem too much, and the idea of the 4 and 32 sounds much better. Would schools have to go to a 4-day week as well? What do you think? Or would we prefer the idea of a 3-day weekend without the kids around for at least one of the days? I mentioned how COVID threw the typical work week aside, but it also exposed a worker burnout. That had been building for years. That started ever since we were all so easily connected to work all day, all night, 7 days a week, even when we weren't physically there. Long before Elon Musk took over Twitter and installed sleeping quarters in the office, companies did ask their employees to work even longer hours, less time off, less vacation, same pay, just work harder and longer. If they didn't explicitly say so, it was implied that that's what you had to do to get ahead. What's the matter, Larry? Are you not dedicated? Even people who never had COVID did catch the quitting disease. Some companies put forth some efforts. They tried to limit meetings and limit social media, cut back on emails. Just wasn't enough, though, right? People were, and they are, burnt out. Some companies, especially those with knowledge-based workers, were trying 5-hour workdays, contending that people like programmers and others were only creatively productive for that amount of time, and that any other time during a workday was just being filled with nothing. Then there's, of course, the Parkinson's Law, conceived in 1955. It is the tendency for the amount of work required for something to increase or decrease based on the amount of time allotted to complete that assignment. I need that report for Monday, as opposed to I need that report by noon. There are some employers who also allow people to work when they are feeling most productive. 10 in the morning, 11 at night, we don't care. Doesn't matter. Just get the job done to meet timely team initiatives. All this to say that maybe it is time. Maybe we are ready for some concrete changes in the workplace. And let's face it, employees have always been ready for some change. Anybody who's worked a 9-to-5 job realizes how much of their day, week was just fill in. What has changed, and this latest survey has said it, is that employers, perhaps, are slowly coming around. Perhaps. Maybe their prison warden-like mentality of seeing their workers chained in place during this pre-scheduled time doesn't mean they're getting the most out of them. And let's talk about our health. In 1926, I'm sure the 40-hour work week was a godsend. But in this almost 100 years, we've figured out, countless studies have shown, that 8 hours for labor, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will just isn't a healthy balance. Let's take this alleged 40-hour work week. Even if you are not connected to your job when you leave the workplace, There's getting to and from work. Easily add 2 hours a day, sitting in your car or on a bus or a train. At least 2 hours a day. Then add the time of you at home, making your lunch for tomorrow, or getting clothes ready for work, or even just thinking about the job. The work week isn't 40 hours, it's 50, 60, 70 easily. You only get paid for the 40. Medical studies have shown that this is too much. Not healthy physically or mentally. Stress has become such a big part of our life. And granted, some of it is self-inflicted. And even just living today can be stressful, including stress that comes from home and from family. But think about it. How much does work contribute to your stress? A lot. Less work would mean less stress. Four of the biggest contributors to stress is when we feel we have no control over something, no predictability in it, no outlets for our frustration, and no social support structure, friends and confidants, to help us get through it all. Those four. Most workplaces and jobs offer no control, no predictability. You are at their mercy. Usually no outlets because it's difficult to talk to your boss and HR is a sham. There you are, 3 of the 4, your biggest stress inducers, and they come at work. Stress is not just a mental health issue because under stress, your brain begins to shut down some basic physical abilities like proper digestion, sleep, pleasure responses, and more. I'm sure you've heard the phrase stress-related disease. So less work with more control of your job, the time, the hours, the predictability, better health. How do we get this done? Here we have yet another study about the benefits of a 4-day work week. And that's almost 70 years after Nixon predicted that it was just around the corner. I'm starting to think that I shouldn't believe anything else he ever said.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Anyway, yet here we are, still pounding away on the same rock pile. I personally do not trust corporations to do the right thing. Corporations are there to make money. They'll fire people, cut benefits, take shortcuts, cheat on their taxes, and worse, just to show a profit. I don't see benevolence. I don't see them volunteering a 4-day work week, even though studies have shown that a shorter work week would be better for them and the workers. But still, it's a tough sell. I also think we are past the point of governments signing such things into law. Governments do have a role here and can lead by example. No country in the world has adopted a 4-day work week model, but there are about 18 nations experimenting with it. In countries like Iceland and Japan, governments and public sector workers are doing 4 days a week. Ireland, Canada, USA, Australia all have some of the biggest 4-day pilot programs going on. 7 EU nations and the UK have trial programs as well. Interestingly, the United Arab Emirates have changed the work and school week to 4.5 days. Which reminds me, we used to get Friday afternoons off during July and August. In a 4-day work week, would we get Thursday afternoons off during the summer? Was that just getting greedy? Traffic up to the cottage will still be brutal, right? In Iran, I heard they're adopting casual Fridays, where 1 day a week a woman can wear her hijab a little looser. I know, not funny. It was meant to be a biting satire. Those are different things. I realized that a 4-day work week just wouldn't apply to everyone. A lot of big companies would preach it in principle, but ignore it in the cubicles and the trenches. Then there's laborers, entrepreneurs, farmers, people who have to work 2 jobs just to make ends meet. A lot of those just wouldn't have a 4-day work week option. A lot of places just couldn't offer flexible hours or a work when you're inspired kind of setting. Excuse me there, Pamela. There seems to be 4 people in line at the cash register. Yeah, maybe later. just not in the mood. Add to this that we're such a fractured, selfish society lately, aren't we? Somebody gets a 4-day work week and we can't be happy for them. How come they get a 4-day work week and I don't? We're children. How come I have to go to bed at 8:30? Over at Bobby's house, he gets to stay up till 9. Well, maybe then you'd like to go over and live at Bobby's house. Maybe I will. Okay, I'll do it. Go ahead. If you are looking to do a deep dive on this latest study, or maybe, send a link to your boss, the group is called 4-Day Workweek Global. 4-Day Workweek Global. Last thing, 4-Day Workweek sounds good because there's more time for you. Make sure that you want that. Remember, at the beginning of COVID, a lot of folks got to spend more time at home with their family and with themselves. And as it turned out, a lot of people just didn't know how to do that.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.